Hi, good evening. How's everyone doing? I'm back. I think it's been 2 weeks. I got to get back on the road. I was supposed to make a video every week, and it just has not been working out like that for many different reasons. Coming home late, not feeling well. So little different things, but I'm here now. And so before I get into what I want to talk about, I do want to share my God box with you guys. So this is my God box. As you can see, um, it's like a gift box. Actually, I got it from the dollar store last year. Remember, I told you I have a whole bunch of boxes in my house. So it's a box that I had from last year. And so I'm just going to use that. I was going to go to Hobby Lobby, get all decked out, but I just don't have the time to do that right now. So I just used what I had inside my house. Okay, so that's that. So actually, I'm going to put some stuff because it's empty right now, but I need to put some stuff in. So I'm going to put some things in there. So last time when I talked about the action of doing, and right before I left, well, last time I talked about characteristic, my character, right, my character. But at the end of the video, I talked about the action of doing, and that was something I would be talking about the next time I made a video. And so that's where we are today. And I had shared a little encouragement note that a good friend of mine sent me that fell right in place with um, that fell right in place with what I was talking about. And I'll read that again. Let me find it real quick. I'm sorry. I should have had it out on. Okay, but while I'm looking for it, I can continue to talk. Oh, here we go. So, and this was when she sent it to me, it was Motivation Monday. She sent it to me on a Monday. It says, within you is power to be positive, right? The way we conduct our lives is not compelled by sources from the outside, but within. Are you fostering negative or positive thoughts? Did you know there is hidden life in your thoughts? You are the creator of what you produce. You have the capability to change your life by changing your thoughts. It's never what really happens to you, merely how you respond. You can decide to use life experience or challenges as a divine path to wisdom, or you can use it as an excuse to stay wounded. The choice is yours. Either way, you must act. Okay, and remember I said we are doing. So doing and act is the same thing, motion, moving forward, right? And so ACT is an acronym, okay, that she made. ACT, which is A, acknowledge and identify. Why, okay, why are you feeling that way? Why are you having these thoughts? Why are you feeling that way? C, confront it. What is the purpose? What is it telling you? Okay, so why are you feeling this way? What is the thought? You're confronting it. Why, what is the purpose of having these thoughts? What are these thoughts telling you? And tackle. What action are you going to take to address and overcome it? Okay. So doing. So it falls right in place because this week I have a coworker that is in school and she had, I want to say it's a psychology class. I hope that was right. But it had she had to interview me, and she chose me to interview because we have a few similar stories of growing up. She's much younger than me. She's about, not about, she is 20 years younger than me. Um, but and I think what she chose was addiction, like how addiction affected your life, and based upon things that you happened growing up, did it affect you socially, emotionally, psychologically, growing up, and how did you interact? And so there, when she interviewed me, I almost felt like I was in a therapy session because it took me way back. Like some of the questions she asked me, took me way back to childhood, and some of those things weren't pleasant. And one of the questions she asked me, because I had dealt with alcohol and drugs growing up, family members, not myself. And I dealt with domestic violence, seeing my mom physically, emotionally abused, as well as that reflecting on me and my brother. And I wasn't physically abused, but I was very much verbally and emotionally abused. And she asked me what, although all those things went on, what did I do to, like, not to be on drugs and alcohol, or, still be able to function and be where I'm at now today, as, having the job that I have, or the education that I have. And, I was explaining to her that, one is because, well, with the drugs and alcohol, it's just I seen what it did to my family, because I just had history and history and history and history of, alcohol and drugs. My mom was on alcohol and drugs, my grandmother, my aunt, my father was an alcoholic, so it was just all around me. And I think I seen what it did to my family members, so that's what it sort of scared me. And what scares me is because sometimes people who are on drugs and alcohol um are, are well educated, are, sometimes come from what you want to categorize as a good family. And so would it scared me to see how, people would get on drugs and just sort of lose their whole life. And how I explained to her that in my mom's um, drug addiction, she wasn't that categorized as like a crackhead, coming out the crack house. She worked every day. She went to school. I always knew that you had to work. I always knew that education was important. So what they categorize as a functional addict, that's pretty much what it was. And so at one time in my life, I felt like that was normal. Some of the things that I seen was normal. And so, but growing up, after a while, whether it was good or bad, I learned from it. And so I remember I want to say my first video, and I stated how the certain things that I learned from my mom, and a lot of the things I said were not necessarily positive. And so I had to think back on that. Now, that wasn't true, and even the things that were negative, I still learned from them. So I learned what alcohol and drugs can do. I learned, you know, um, what domestic violence can do, and emotional hurt. And so she asked me, my coworker asked me, what did I do in order to, get out of that place? And in the early part of my life, I don't know what I did. I just knew I didn't want to use drugs and alcohol. That was my one thing that that I had set in my mind. Like, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to. And I um and so there were times where I maybe wanted to run away or wanted to kill myself, and just different things from different stories. It was like killing myself. It was like, okay, am I gonna really cut myself with this knife? It wasn't that bad where I might have went to the bathroom with the knife, but we didn't go that far. And with running away, I was like, man, if I run away, I'm gonna have to, sell a little booty or something because, I had no, if you're young, you don't really, there's nothing else that you can do. So that made me stay in the condition where I was at. And, I had explained to her that mm, because I was not physically abused or but I was very verbally and emotionally abused and mentally abused. I had to learn how to forgive. And so when we talk about doing, what are some of those things that I had to do in order to forgive? What actions did I have to do in order to forgive? And I just didn't have to forgive her. I had to forgive a lot of people, but she took the blunt of the what's that called? The blunt of the blame because she was the one that was there. She was the one that was there. And so one of the things that I had to do was I had to learn how to forgive. And that was a real hard process. It was a hard process for me, because still able to keep a grudge. Now it's a little more easier because I have tools, but as a young girl, I didn't have those tools. And although, you hear God, you hear at church, you got to forgive in order to be forgiven. They weren't telling me what to do in order to do it. You would always hear, yes, you got, in order for God to forgive you, you got to forgive. But I didn't know how to do it. All I knew is how to be mad and angry and hurt and depressed and, trying to figure out why. And so, I didn't learn those things until I got older and really gained my own relationship with God. And once I gained my own relationship with God and I started um, placing myself around certain people, then I began to learn how to forgive and how to let go, you know. And sometimes it's still a process. Not so much with my childhood. I've worked through that process um, because I remember my mom. She would always say, like when I was at odds with somebody, and she would say, "Ebony, ask God to help you understand instead of being understood." And I had to apply that with me and her, and with other people that I felt that hurt me. I had to ask God to help me to understand instead of being understood. And that's what helps the process. That was my action. So when something came up, or somebody said something to me in a certain way, and I would revert back to maybe when my mom said something to me, or even when my mom said something to me when she was alive, and it would take me back to childhood, you know, um, sometimes I would have to, like process that, because I would have to tell myself that she's not the same person that she was when I was a little girl. And so a lot of that was working through that process. Another thing that helped me is that I went to meetings with my mom. So I got to hear her share her strength, hope, and experience. And so although it was an NA meeting and it was for people that, were on drugs and alcohol trying to live a new life, anybody could apply the message to their life. And so a lot of that I was able to take, and it helped me to understand her instead of being understood, and understand that she was doing what was done to her. Um, she was at one time raised by her. guess it's her great grandparents, I want to say. Her mom abandoned her. And so some of the things that she said to me was the things that was said to her. But when she got better, she knew better. And um, there was a time where I decided that I no longer um, wanted to be angry because God don't make us do anything. He gives us a choice, free will. And so I made the choice. And that was another thing. That was another action that I did. I made a choice. I made a choice that I wanted to start the process of forgiving. Now, there were some things that I still didn't know what to do or how to go about it, but I know I wanted to get rid of it because once I let it go, it was like a big load off. And then when that same, I call it a spirit. So I call unforgiveness a spirit. But in the emotion spirit, when it would come back, now when it comes back, I'm able to recognize and say, I recognize what this is, and I know how to, um, go to God and talk to Him about it and tell Him how I'm feeling, and go to certain people and, explain to them. I usually go to people that won't necessarily always agree with me, but just let me know, oh, Eb, you may be being a little too sensitive today, or no, it is, but, this, that, and the other. So that was part of my doing, and then once I was able to start working and healing the relationship with me and my mom, I finally decided I didn't want to be angry with my father anymore. And I know my mom would always go back to New York just to visit because that's where she was from. And I had told her, next time you go visit, see if you can find my dad and give him my number. And so next time she went, that's what she did. And so I was able to mend a relationship with him also before he passed. So we had got back in touch with each other, and after 5 years, he had passed. And I hadn't seen my father since I was 5. And I was real angry with him, real angry. Um, I guess that's anybody that maybe has grown up without a father. You feel like life maybe would have been different if they were present. Although he was an alcoholic and very abusive to me also. So, that was part of that was part of my doing. So a lot of my childhood, I was just real angry, and it's funny because one day I was driving, and me and she's like my best friend from childhood, and we were talking, and somehow we got into when she would spend the night, and she would talk about how mean I was, how mean I was, and I would get mad and then leave the house and go to another friend's house and leave her there. And, and she was like, her stupid behind, she says, my stupid behind would come and follow right where you was at. Like, she's not going to leave me in the house. And so when she was telling me, it was funny. It wasn't funny what I did, but it was funny because she took me back to where we were at. And so I was able to laugh, and she was able to laugh, and I was able to make amends to her and tell her I was sorry, and that to let her know I was just angry. I was angry. Like a lot of people just didn't know what was going on, because by then my mom was single. She wasn't married at that time, but she was like in the depths of her addiction. And so she was an unpleasant person. And there were times where, like the next morning after the weekend, I would just go in the room just to make sure she was still breathing. So, I was angry, and we were able to laugh about it, and joke about it and, talk about it. But that was someone who really knew me then, really knew Ebony then, and still stayed my friend, and I remember me and Pat used to get upset with each other all the time. I would get mad with her, offended. I would get offended easily. And sometimes it still happens because I always feel like I need to protect myself. And a lot of that is not being able to protect myself as a child, because you got to do what your parents say. You have to listen. Where you gonna go? I had no one to go to. I didn't have any uncles or aunts that I could go live with. They was out on the streets too, where they was getting high too. I had nowhere to run to. So I had to stay there and deal with it. And I think I was angry with my brother at a while too, because he was able to escape, whether it was him going off to Job Corps, whether, him going and getting married, but I had to stay there. I had to stay where I was at. I was too young to fend for myself. So, at that time when she talked about it and she took me back, like I was angry, and I'm glad not to be angry like that anymore. There's still stuff I deal with, when people, if I feel like people are coming at me, I will protect myself. I will stand up for myself. I will speak up. And that is, me feeling like I'm being attacked. If I feel like I'm being attacked, I'm going to protect myself, and let people know you can say it to me. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But, just bring it to me a different way, because I had to keep my mouth shut for so long. I was really scared of my mom. She was old school. She was real old school. So, it wasn't like you was going to be talking about, mm-mm, constant, and so, now as an adult and I do have freedom, I it's hard for me to allow people to say anything they want to say. So, and I don't know if that's something I need to work on. It might be. But the spirit of offense, I know when I have the spirit of offense. Like I know when I'm being offended, so I'll pray and ask God, Lord, help me with this spirit of offense. And I think I talked about it before where, sometimes I'm planning on, this is what I'm gonna say, but thank God for his grace and his mercy because he will tame me. Thank you for the Holy Spirit because he tames me, he quickens my spirit. Um, and when I get to that place, it's something totally different. And I know that's nothing but God because if it was my will, it would be something totally different. So part of doing, that's part of my doing now, and it's funny because I was telling my coworker who was interviewing me, because she asked me, was spirituality or was God always like a source for me to go to? And it was. My first teacher of who God was my mom. She was. I remember laying in the bed with her and learning the 23rd Psalms and the Lord's Prayer. So she was the person that I knew. She was the one who introduced me to God. Now, once I got older, my understanding became a little more different, but she was my first introduction to who God was. And so I always knew that I could depend on God. I always knew that he was my source. So, I was telling her, I don't know if me and my brother was in care. I don't know. I just know we used to live with this lady. Now I call her Aunt Rochelle. Well, I stay with her mother. But her daughter I call Aunt Rochelle now. And she's an aunt. But we stayed with them. We stayed with them so long till, um we had they created us a room. They fixed up the basement for us. And I remember making up songs, gospel songs. I would make my own little gospel songs to God, asking him to let my mom come get us. And so, and it's funny because I would make my own little gospel songs, singing to God, you know. So I always knew to call on him. And I was a little girl. It was first grade. How old are you when you're in first grade? 5, 6, I think. Yeah. So, so now, even now, I know who to call on. At the end of the day, even when I'm depressed or get low at the end of the day, I'll be like, God, and that's what I do now. When you're talking about part of doing is, what's that called? Like surrendering. Sometimes after I've done everything, I didn't try to move this over here, move that over there, do this, do that. And then after a while, it's like I have to be like, God, I have no control over this. By then I'm at my low. Like, God, I have no control over this. Your promise is, A, B, C, and D. And I just need you and I need your help. So um, that's part of doing. That's part of doing. One for me is God is like number one. Two is placing myself around people that will not tell me what I want to hear or what I need to hear, but they say it in love. And I try to do the same thing. When I talk to people, I try to, because hurting their feelings is not going to make them do anything different. Sometimes they'll make them resist. But when you really want somebody to hear the message and hear, whatever God is speaking through you or, whatever it is, we have to say it with love. I remember I used to think that telling people off was the thing to do, but it's not. People don't care nothing about you, because you feel like you can tell them off. All they do is make them not want to be around you or come to you or scared to talk to you. I don't want people to be scared to talk to me. I don't. I don't. And sometimes it's hard because sometimes depend on, well, not when I'm telling somebody, but just when people do something to me. If somebody comes to me for a word or advice or suggestion or thought, yeah, I try to do it in love. And another thing that I do is I take a lot of things that my mom said to me once she got clean. Because when my mom got clean, she was the bomb. And I learned a lot from her. I learned a lot from her in both stages. I learned a lot from her when she was in her addiction, and I've learned a lot from her when she was clean. I did. And one of the things that I always like when I'm upset, um, somebody pisses me off, I ask God to help me to understand instead of being understood. Because at that point, I'm asking God to remove me. Don't let me see me. Don't let me worry about my feelings, but let me see where that person is coming from. Let me see because that person may be hurting or going through something. And sometimes it's hard, but eventually I get to that point. And I remember another thing my mom used to do is she would tell me, like, I would say I come home or I go to her house and I'm talking to her and I'm telling her something that happened at work or I'm telling her something that happened with my son's father, something, I'm offended. Whatever it is, I'm offended. Somebody made me mad or hurt my feelings. And or I could just be complaining about life. And she would say, Ebony, tell me 10 things, write me a gratitude list and tell me 10 things you're grateful for. And when she would tell me, it would piss me off because I didn't want to talk about that. I didn't want to talk about what I'm grateful for and all of that. And she would say, you don't have to tell me now. You can go home, you can think about it. But what she did is she was sowing a seed. Because as soon as she said it, although I may have not told her anything, it made me start thinking. It made me start thinking. So by the time I left and got home, I would call her and say, Mom, this is my list. And it would be more than 10 things. So what she did was she was sowing a seed of gratitude. And so that's what I have to do now. When I get into a place where I might start complaining or this, that, and the other, is write a list of gratitude. And I haven't done that in a while. And she would tell me, Ebony, give me 10 things you're grateful for. And it would make me so mad. So mad. I'm like, I'm trying to tell her about what's going on. She want to talk about a gratitude list. She want to talk about a doggone gratitude list. I ain't trying to be spiritual right now. I'm not trying to be spiritual right now, but that's okay. She was sowing that seed. And by the time I got home, I had my list. And I would call her and I would tell her what my list was. Call her and tell her what my list. And then another thing that she would do is like, man, I haven't done these things in a long time. Like, I'm talking to y'all, but this is really helping me because this is what I'm going to start doing back again. I guess I don't have her here to remind me, and I really don't have anyone around me that, well, I'm not going to say that, but not the things that she would say, I guess. Let's say that. But, another thing she would do, like if I was at odds with somebody and, I was telling her, like she was my go-to person. She was that person that, she's gonna tell you what it is. If you're wrong, you're wrong. She's gonna tell you, but then, she just had a way about going by explaining things and telling you stuff. But she would tell me, Ebony, ask God. Like I used to have this one coworker, and oh man, this lady to me was the devil. Just woo, older lady, and it was hard. I tried my best not to disrespect her because she was an older lady, and like I said, my mom was old school, so you don't disrespect older people. That's just not something you did. That's not the way I was raised. Even if they're wrong. It's just a way that you go about doing things. And, I would tell her about it. And I remember one day, I'm telling her, and she says, you know what, Ebony, ask God to bless her with 10 things you want God to bless you. I don't want, and I guess that goes back to those things where, God says, pray for those who hate you, those that stuff. Because she was like, ask God to give her 10 things that you want him to give you. So every morning, when me and my son was on our way to work and me to drop him to school, we would pray in the car, and I would pray. And first I would pray, God bless her with money, bless her with tangible things. But the more and more I did it, the prayer changed. And it changed to God, grant her some peace. Renew her mind. 10 things that I want God to do. God, whatever it is, heal her. Whether it's physical, emotional, mental, and so my prayer changed. Some of it was still tangible things, but it began to get a little more deeper. I gotta go back to doing that stuff. Yeah. So that's part of doing. What did I do to get to this point? One of the things is that I made a choice. I made a choice not to use drugs and alcohol. um, the second thing is that I made a choice to forgive. I made a choice. So a lot of it is choice, right? A lot of it is choice. A lot of it is choice. So I made a choice not to use drugs and alcohol. I made a choice to forgive. Um, then I listened. I made a choice to listen because I didn't have to listen. I didn't even have to do those things, But somewhere inside, I wanted it fixed. And in order to fix something, you got to do it. You got to do something, right? You got to have some action. So I decided to listen. I decided to follow through, follow instructions. I decided to take suggestions. That's these are the things that I did in order to get to where I'm at now. You know, career wise, financially wise, emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally. I decided to just do it. No. But I listened and then I took suggestions. So I really did. I really, even now, I've said it before, God, help me to understand instead of being understood. Because right now I want to go off on these people. Help me to understand instead of being understood because they misunderstanding me. They being offended and I ain't even saying that. Now I want to be offended because they offended. So please help me to understand it, but instead of being understood because I'm getting pissed off. You know, um, being able to recognize, that feeling that I asked God to remove from me. So I'm able to recognize when I am dealing with the spirit of offense. I'm able to recognize and understand when I'm dealing with the spirit of unforgiveness and anger, and have realized that I have a very bad temper, but I'm able to recognize these things now. The feeling doesn't feel good anymore. Before I was able to sit in it. If I was able to get mad at somebody, I should be able to sit in it and be okay with it. But when you ask God to relieve something from you, He does it. You can tell the difference. And so I asked Him to remove those things. And I had to do so. They say faith without works is dead. My faith was asking God, me asking God to help me remove these negative emotions and feelings. But then I also had to be able to recognize it and work on it when it came up. And part of recognizing it, or when it comes up, is maybe talking to someone who can help me see that the situation in a different aspect. I think that's very important when people come to you and talk to you about something. Even when they're wrong, you just agreeing with them. Girl, that's right. That's wrong. No, that's wrong. No, I don't think that's what they were saying. Maybe this was going on. This, that, and the other. And then so I am now really able to recognize those things. And then I used to do it on a regular basis. I don't do it anymore, but I'm gonna start. Write me some gratitude lists down. Why are you grateful? I'm grateful that I ain't stuck in this house in the dark and depressed. Although I miss my mom. Just grateful. Got to write a gratitude list. You know, grateful I can walk. I'm in pain a whole lot of times, but I'm grateful that I'm not paralyzed. So gratitude list get you out of a funk. It gets you out of a funk. And then asking God to bless my enemies or people I have odds with. 10 things that I would like God to bless me with. So that's some good stuff. You know, that's some good stuff. And when I did this interview with my coworker, her name's Ashley, it brought back some stuff because, I'm telling you, it felt like we was in therapy because I was gonna start crying a couple of times, because I really had to heal and still healing, no longer mad at my mom, but still healing. Still healing. Because there were just some things that I didn't understand growing up and seeing her go through and why she stayed you know, and there were probably some things that she didn't understand either. She probably was dealing with some fear and, feeling like self-worth. She probably didn't have some self-worth, you know. Hurt people. That's what they say. Cycle. So that is what we're going to deal with today. That's some good stuff. I needed this. This was good for me. I know I'm sharing to help other people, but this was good for me because it was a reminder. It was a reminder how I got to where I'm at now. It was where my state of mind is now. Not that, like I said, not that I don't deal with anger. Not that I don't deal with being mad. Not that I don't deal with being offended or unforgiveness. I just process it a little quicker than I did before, So instead of holding it for years, maybe some days, maybe weeks, but years, But in that time, I'm working, I'm talking to God about it. I'm, you know, talking to people that can help me get through the process, just to let it go. Like I said before, when you hold on to those things, it stops you from doing what you need to do and where you need to get to and what you need to do, what God has for you to do. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helps someone. Um, leave some comments. If there's something that you would like for me to talk about, email it to me and I can talk about it. And how my experience, how I dealt with it, or what my experience is. Okay, you guys have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful week. Bye bye.